With the arrival of Stellaris 3.0, new mechanics have been introduced into the game, one of which is a overhauled economy system. Now, it's not nearly as large as the Le Guin update, which completely uprooted the old system and put something new in. No, this time around, we've got something that streamlines the system a little bit more to cater to the new population mechanics. We'll be talking about that at a later date, but still it is important to know that the economies has changed, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Let's dive right in to the new mechanics involving the economy. So in order to properly illustrate things, I've set up a little empire, and specifically on this particular planet, we have ourselves some energy districts. We will get towards the industrial districts in good time, but first the generator districts, just to get the base resources properly illustrated. A generator district at its base will generate 2 housing and 2 technician jobs, and that will then generate a certain amount of energy per district. There's a base value attached to this depending on your game and what kind of traits you've picked for your empire and what kind of technologies you've used. This value may be different. Right now 25 is my specific example. It may not be applicable to you, but the overall back story does. So right now we got 2 housing and 2 technician jobs. Relatively straightforward at its base. If we go to our outliner here and we go to another planet, specifically Collidor, the first Collidor that is. As you can see, we have a similar amount of districts here. However, you can see that they will be generating a lot more energy per district, 28 in this case. That is because of a couple of things. First of all, this planet is generally pretty happy and it has a higher stability, which means there is a higher output on the planet. However, what is, even more important is the fact that we've built an energy grid here. The energy grid basically does the following. It generates 15% additional energy credits from technicians. Relatively straightforward. It doesn't really do all that much special compared to the old version of it. It's a nice little boost, and it will allow your empire to generate more energy. Plus, it will add an additional technician job, which is really, really nice. And that hasn't really changed all that much. However, if we get to the next example on the other energy world we have right here, you will see that we have a larger amount of energy districts available, which is great. And on top of that, we have this special energy Nexus building. Now, the Energy Nexus building is a second tier of the energy grid building that we built before. Now, the energy grid building is great. The Energy Nexus building, however, is far, far superior because it does something rather special. And that is the following. Basically, what it does is it takes the previous value, it adds an additional technician job on top of the one that we've already had before, and it will generate an extra technician job on every single district available. That is a huge deal, and it's something you want to keep in mind because it basically means that you are going to be specializing your planets. Especially if you're thinking by yourself, okay, this world over here, it has a lot of energy districts. I want to fill that up with energy tiles. We want to fill that stuff up. But on top of that, we want to get an energy nexus to smoothen things out. Because for every single one of our districts, in this case 7, and if we build a energy nexus, we will get 7 additional jobs. So you can see here in the tooltip, the housing is now +2, but technician jobs is +3. Whereas before it was +2. If we go to our population here, you will see that we now have space for 23 technician jobs that generate an absolutely insane amount of energy. Of course, as everybody knows, energy is what floats your economy and allows you to get ahead. This means that you can get insane amounts of energy. Then finally, on top of that, you can use the generator world colony designation right here to get even more technicians output of 25%, which is a huge deal. Now, one thing that we want to keep in mind, however, is that the Energy Nexus does have an upkeep cost of 1 gas per month. However, you can only build 1 of these per planet, which means if you have 2 energy worlds, you only need 1 gas plant per planet on one of those 2 worlds to make sure that you have the upkeep for your energy worlds. And in that way, you can generate insane amounts of energy. Now, for instance, if I go over towards this world and I'm just like, okay, I want to upgrade this building because for every single job that we have available, I want to get one more. So we can just prioritize this in the list by hitting shift click, and it will go up to the queue, and in 400 days it will be done, and this particular place will all of a sudden have a significantly larger amount of technicians on top of it, which is awesome. And of course we get a flat bonus of 25% on the value that they generate. This way you can generate insane amounts of energy, and you want to keep an eye on that. In addition, this also applies to some of our other planetary types. Let's say that we've got ourselves a mining world. A mining world, you want to build yourself a mineral purification hub because it does exactly the same thing as the energy building. It will give you an additional job per district. In this case, however, it requires modes for upkeep. You kind of want to balance things in such a way that you have 2 of these at any moment in time so that you can build 1 mode or 1 crystal or 1 gas on a planet to make sure that everything is nice and balanced. But the more districts you have on the planet and then plop down one of these buildings that improve the amount of workers you have on the planet, the better, because it basically means that there is more value by adding a purification hub or an energy nexus or a food generating facility onto a planet. The more you have, the better return of investment you will get on your worlds. Another example is, of course, the food one, which in this particular case is the food processing facility. It will generate 1 farmer job, but if we go to the second tier, which also uses modes, then basically it will add a farmer job for every single district, which in this case would be 7 additional jobs, which then translates to the following. Let's take a quick look here. These guys are generating 13 food times 7. You get a general idea. It becomes a huge bonus. It cannot be underestimated how important this is. Now, there are more complex versions of this as well, because of course we have advanced resources too. Now, advanced resources are a little bit more different. What we can do here is we can go to our capital system of Trappist Prime. It's a wonderful little continental world, and as you can see in our planetary summary, there is a brand new industrial district modifier, or at least it's a modifier in a certain extent, because no longer will you have to build alloy plants all over your worlds. No, instead, you will have this district. Now, the industrial district can do 2 things. Either it generates both alloys and consumer goods, which is fine, or if you set the forge world or the production world, industrial world designation, it will either be generating in consumer goods or alloys. As you can see here, I have a alloy world and a consumer good world. Now, what is really important here is that you will want to build the specialization building for that world on that world as soon as you can. And in this particular case, that would be the Alloy Megaforge. Now, the Alloy Megaforge in this particular case adds an additional metallurgist job to every single building. However, if we build an Alloy Nano plant, it will add 2. So basically, the advanced resources, consumer goods, as well as alloys, have an additional layer on top of what you already had. Now, the upkeep will be significantly higher. An Alloy Nano plant will cost you 4 motes to upkeep, which means you need 2 mote plants in order to keep this up and running, as the base production is actually 4. My apologies, so you only need 1. But yeah, basically, if you're going to go ahead and build an Alloy Megaforge on a planet, you always want to make sure that you have yourself a chemical plant on said world, because then in that case you can crank out insane amounts of alloys or consumer goods depending on what you need at that time. Now, there is a couple of things that you need to keep in mind whilst doing this. If we go, for instance, to Trappist Secundus, which, according to our outliner, is our consumer good world, you will see that we, of course, have a civilian fabricator on this planet. Now, you cannot have a civilian fabricator or an alloy plant on one building, one planet at the same time. So in order to boost your stuff properly, you need to select your planets and make sure that you use your industrial districts where relevant. Now, there are, of course, always exception to this rule. If we quickly pop over towards our Ecumenopolis on Castor Prime, you will see that if we go in here, we do not have a governor, and we should probably fix that, so let's do that first. We will see that we have both a alloy megaforge and a civilian fabricator on this planet. And as such, we are generating an insane amount of alloys on this world. 217 is pretty decent. We can always bump up those numbers because those are in fact rookie numbers. The main problem you're going to have is to get enough pops in order to boost the population necessary to fill all those jobs. However, because of the new systems within the game, it's a lot easier to move pops around due to the transit system. But we will talk about that in some other time. But yeah, Ecumonopoly, you can have both there on the arcologies factories as well as the foundry arcologies. That's the exception here. There are also exceptions for ring worlds as well as some of the hive minds and machine worlds. So keep all of that stuff in mind and make sure you read things. Now you may be wondering, ASpec, this is all nice and all, but I'm struggling getting the right technologies. If I go to a planet and I want to get the energy nexus building, or I want to get the alloy refinery buildings, or I want specifically the strategic resource buildings, I'm just having trouble getting those. Well, don't worry about that too much because there is something really simple that you can do to alleviate that issue. It's not uncommon to wait decades to get the required technologies. However, what is a good way of expediting this process is by getting a materials researcher. Now, normally they would get a research bonus to that particular thing if you're going for a technology that is in a materials category, and in this particular case, let's say the synthetic crystal plants or the exotic gas refineries, which all fall under the materials version. To be honest, all of the important technology ones when it comes to economy fall under materials. You can expedite that by just putting a materials researcher on that, because it's not specified in the game, but according to the scripts, basically any scientist that has a certain modifier on it, or specifically an expertise, will get a technology from that category easier by 25%, which is a very, very large modifier. Basically, you will want to run with a materials scientist as early as you can so you can get those exotic technologies in order to get them running within your economy. Just go and do that as soon as you can and you should be golden. So, just to wrap things up, the most important buildings for economy right now are the Tier 1 and Tier 2 of the specialist buildings that you can get in your economy. These are, of course, the wondrous food processing facility, the mineral purification plant, the energy nexus, and, of course, the joys of the alloy plants and the consumer good plants. You will need a materials scientist to get these guys quickly. It's imperative that you do, because it will allow you to specialize your industry in a way that was not really the case in the past. In addition, you will want to specialize your planets by having complete district fulfillment. You want to get as many pops on these worlds. You want to set, hey, I want to get all these energy districts, I want them filled up, and then turn on the generator world planetary specialization, the designation for it. You want to do all that stuff, and if you do all these things, everything will go well. If you have Megacorp, I highly recommend you to get an Ecumonopolis as soon as possible, because Ecumonopoly will allow you to build insane amounts of consumer goods, and more importantly, the alloys that you need in order to get the resources in order to go to space and build the fleets and build those outposts. If you want to spice things up, build yourself some habitats and make sure that you get even more technology rolling. But in the end, it is important that you get your base technologies and base resources up and running by specializing your worlds. Make sure you always get 2 of them. If you manage to lose one, you'll have one to fall back on, and you will be rolling in those resources. Don't be like ASpec. Don't be like he was inside of the 3.0 release stream, because he did not do that, and ASpec was a real dum-dum. So I want to thank you all so much for watching this video, and of course my patrons as well. If you watch this video all the way to this spot, make sure that you put a little comment down below and say, yeah, I understand the economy. Put that in a comment down there if you do, and if you watch the video up to this point, and it will be our little secret. I don't know that you've watched the whole video. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope this has cleared things up a little bit, because the economy system can be a little bit convoluted, and wrapping your head around things can be a frustrating endeavor. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take good care of yourselves, and as always, the spice must flow as well as the growth of the economy.